And the Oscar goes to Crash.
Hello and welcome to Intoxicated Masculinity. If it is the end of the year, then we are talking horror. In this case, horror from 2022, a year that was already pretty horrible. So this is the first time we've done annual horror awards, but I felt like I watched a whole bunch of horror this year. Probably the most horror I've watched since I was a kid. So we have three sets of lists we're going to do, and I'm just going to include them all in this one video. So the first is going to be kind of the toughest. Our next two are going to be obviously our top 5 favorite and our bottom 5 least favorite. But I also came up with a third list that I wanted to talk a little bit about because I saw a fair number of these movies, and that is movies that are the generic 5. The 5 movies that I watched and thought were basically nothing, that I didn't care about. And so we're going to go through these kind of quickly because I don't have anything to say about these movies, but I feel like they deserve their own list. So the first one on the list is Choose or Die. So this was I think a Netflix original about kids that have to do a choose, or I don't know. It was sort of like a Truth or Dare, but even more generic, which I thought Truth or Dare was pretty generic in and of itself, and this was more generic than that. So it definitely deserves on the most generic films of 2022 list. Next up is Scream 5. The Scream movies have been going downhill for a long time, I think, basically since the first one. And this movie felt like nothing. It was I felt like in the end the killers were the people you would have expected to be killers. It was very, very dull. It's crazy because it made a lot of money. It was a very successful movie. I had nothing to say about this movie. I watched it, and it was very much just kind of in one ear, out the other. It is probably my 5th favorite Scream movie, which is not saying very much, because I didn't like the last 3 Scream movies very much either. So Scream 5, just generic. Again, not even hate. I can't even put it in my bottom 5 because I didn't hate the movie. I just felt kind of nothing towards it. I also watched Orphan and Orphan First Kill. Orphan I thought was decent, not amazing. Orphan First Kill felt, first of all, it sort of goes beyond the uncanny valley because the orphan is now playing a little bit younger, and the actress is older, and it just doesn't work. I mean, I don't think anybody that's looking at this girl is thinking that she is 10 years old or something. And it's not a criticism of the actress. She's an adult. She's very clearly an adult. She definitely looks kind of younger than her age, I'm sure, but she just doesn't look like a 10-year-old girl, a 12-year-old girl. It just doesn't. The next one, I'm actually switching these up on the fly because I think I was wrong about my initial list. The next one is Black Phone. This is Joe Hill. I really want to like Joe Hill, and I've read several. I think I've read Nosferatu, The Fireman, Horns, and Heart-Shaped Box. I always want to go into a Joe Hill thing wanting to love it. Unfortunately, I rarely love it. It always just kind of comes out kind of like Stephen King came out of a photocopier and just didn't look quite right. And I'm actually getting ahead of myself. Well, no, it was. Yeah, so Black Phone was Joe Hill. I think these are both Joe Hill. Okay, so it's funny. I was confusing myself for a minute because I was talking about Joe Hill. So Joe Hill did Black Phone, which again, I felt very little towards this movie. I think Ethan Hawke did a pretty decent job, but the movie doesn't really feel like it just feels like a very generic kind of a film. And I was mixing it because I was also looking at the other one that I put at the top of the list, which is Mr. Harrigan's Phone, which is actually Stephen King. And I was saying how I think that sometimes Joe Hill comes off as generic Stephen King, and sometimes I think Stephen King can come off as even more generic Stephen King, which is kind of interesting. So Black Phone, again, a kid gets kidnapped, there's some supernatural, and then he gets out. That's really all there is to the movie. It doesn't do a lot. Mr. Harrigan's Phone does less than that. The plot of the film is kid gets old guy to use a phone so he can do stock trades. Old guy dies. and then the kid contacts the guy by phone, and the guy kills somebody. I mean, it's not. It doesn't even feel like a 3-act film. It feels like it's sort of 2 acts with a weird little epilogue. Just aggressively generic. Again, acting's fine. It's Donald Sutherland. I can't right offhand recall the male lead is Jaden Martell, who's been you've seen him in a lot of things, I'm sure. But just there's just nothing here. The script. It's the script. You know. There's not much I think you can do to fix this because it doesn't feel like a fun movie. I mean, again, it barely feels like a movie. This feels a lot more like an episode of a television show, which I think is not speaking in its favor. So, yeah, Black Phone and Mr. Harrigan's Phone, the Joe Hill and Stephen King phone-based horror movies of 2022. I thought both felt aggressively generic. Did not care about them, and I forgot about them within minutes of watching them, and just sort of remember them as I was thinking up this category, because just nothing. Okay, so now we're going to go to our bottom 5. I kind of want to close out with top 5, close out positively. So the number 5 worst horror movie that came out in 2022 is one that actually came very close to ending up as the number 1 most generic movie, but also it's not just generic, it is actually bad. And I talked about this yesterday, so no surprise if you watched that video. And that's Firestarter. There's no reason to remake this movie. There's nothing new to be said. There's no new take. It is just Firestarter, but blander and kind of more boring. It was really, really hard to watch this movie, because I think the difference between generic and bad is the generic movies I didn't have a hard time sitting through. I didn't have a hard time sitting through Scream or Orphan First Kill or Choose or Die or any of those movies. I had a hard time sitting through Firestarter. I feel like the entire acting crew feels like they're half asleep, and the writers are maybe half asleep too. Just very dull, nothing to say, and in a lot of places actively bad. So yeah, Firestarter definitely on my list of worst horror movies 2022. The next one is going to be a little bit controversial, and I think I talked about this movie when it came out, but it's Barbarian. A lot of people really love this movie, and I was thoroughly confused by their love for this movie. This movie is about 1/3 of a really good horror movie, and the other 2/3 are just kind of silly nonsense. And I didn't enjoy it. I was actively getting angry at the movie, which that's a sure sign of a bad movie. If you're sitting in the theater and you're like, "What are you doing? Why is this happening? Why is any of this happening?" The interactions felt like nothing that would happen in real life. I mean, even in the first third, which is the good part, it feels like these people aren't people. These people feel like, no, the writer needed them to do this so the movie could take place, and that's why they did that. And so Barbarian, so on my list of worst horror movies. If you like it, kind of like with all these things, if you like these movies, more power to you. I'm not out here to tell people how they should feel about movies, but for me, Barbarian, the movie drove me nuts. Hated it. So the next one is one that is on my worst, and this sort of it depends on how you categorize. These are movies that I didn't like. They're not necessarily that they were objectively bad. I don't even know what objectively bad means. It's Speak No Evil. So this is another movie that I think a lot of people sort of liked. I thought it was incredibly brutal, and it didn't really have anything to say. I don't necessarily mind movies being brutal if the brutality is in service to something. And in this case, the brutality did not feel like it was in service to anything. It felt like it was there to just kind of be ugly. So it's a Scandinavian film. I can't remember what country it's from, but it's from a Scandinavian country, and it has a very bleak sort of a feel to it. And again, if that is in service to some kind of bigger idea, then I get it. But Speak No Evil felt like it was just being brutal to be brutal. And I did not enjoy it, and I did not have fun with it. Now, let's go into another movie that is terrible, but I could see having fun with. And these two, I debated the top 1 and 2 about which one would actually take the top spot. And I had to give it to not this one, because this one is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Halloween 2018 of Texas Chainsaw Massacre films, except done so badly. I mean, every character is a caricature. Leatherface doesn't look particularly good. Nothing really makes sense. They bring back the character from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 in virtually the same way they brought back Laurie Strode in Halloween 2018. More on that in a moment. And then, I'm going to spoil this a little bit because who cares? Nobody cares about this movie. And then they just kill her off in the dumbest conceivable way. It was such a frustrating film. It is dumb to the point where I think you could probably get some enjoyment out of this if you're just drinking with some friends and you want to watch something bad to kind of make fun of, because you're not going to watch Speak No Evil that way. That's not a movie anybody's going to be fun with. But it does have, I mean, it is very schlocky. It's a very B movie. It's not good, and I couldn't put it at number 1 because the one I did put at number 1 is sort of more an even worse offender than that. But it is a truly badly made film in virtually every way. I was really surprised how bad the movie was. I rewatched all the Texas Chainsaw Massacres this year, and this would definitely go, at least very close to the bottom of that list. So the number 1 worst horror movie of 2022. It could only ever be one thing when I look back on this list, and that's Halloween Ends. First of all, they had a bad idea. The bad idea is, let's make somebody else Michael Myers, or somebody else have the Michael Myers, idea, persona, or whatever, whatever they had this planned out, which I don't think is a good idea, and I don't appreciate that idea. But then they only carry that idea through, about 3/4 of the movie before they then say, but that's not it. It's just going to be Laurie Strode fighting Michael Myers. And that sort of paradoxically makes it even worse, because then this bad idea they had is used in service of nothing, because they just wanted the trailer footage of Laurie Strode fighting Michael Myers. I really suspect there had to be some studio interference here where the filmmakers wanted to do this and have this sort of new person takes over as the Shape. And the studio was like, no, you're going to give us Laurie Strode killing Michael Myers because that's what we need to see in this movie. And I don't know how that couldn't have... It's stuff like this sort of mystifies me in the production process of a film. I mean, clearly they brought this to the studio and said, this is what we want to do, and the studio then approved it. So is it a matter of they didn't tell the studio exactly what they were actually going to do, or the studio changed their mind, or what? But this film ends up just being a big pile of nothing, because it has a bad idea that it can't even follow through, and a sort of finale, not even a third act, just kind of a finale at the end, which is just like kind of fan servicey, but also doesn't really make a lot of sense. A very, very frustrating film to watch. Especially after Halloween Kills from last year, 2 years ago, I can't remember, which was also a very, very bad movie. But at least Halloween Kills, I could see sort of watching, like I was saying about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, watching it with some friends and laughing at the Evil Days Tonight being said 47 times in a row. There's something there. There's something there. There's nothing there. There's a bad idea that's not even carried through. And there's just no way that can't not be the worst horror movie of 2022. So, Halloween Ends, whatever the opposite of saluting you is. All right, so let's talk about the good part of all this. So, this was the toughest, I think, going, because there was a lot of horror movies I really liked, and there's a few that got left off the list, but that's the way it goes. So number 5 is the new Hellraiser, the remake from this year. I rewatched it again for my full Hellraiser binge watch. I didn't like it quite as much as I liked it the first time, but I did like it quite a bit. It's fun. It takes the film in a little bit different direction. So it feels kind of new and fresh, but also keeps a lot of the core elements there. A lot of good blood. I think the Cenobites or the Hell Priests looked very good. it was a cool movie. It looked good. It looked stylish. I think it looked like a Hellraiser movie should look, which Hellraiser movies haven't looked like they should look in a long, long time. The next is one I think I'm maligned by a few people, and I didn't really understand, and that's Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is just a perfect kind of horror film for me. It's breezy, it's quick, it's got nice, snappy dialogue. The characters are irritating, but intentionally so and in fun ways. So you don't hate the characters because I feel like these characters are kind of caricatures, but they also do feel like people that you've probably met or people that you've seen on the internet and things like that. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I thought it's again, and that snappy dialogue, like the dialogue was written very well. And all the characters are kind of bad, but none of the characters are evil either. Like they're just kind of shitty. They're just kind of shitty people. And I think kind of shitty people are, for better or worse, kind of relatable, I think. But yeah, so Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is my number 4 best horror movie of 2022. Number 3 is Prey. It's funny, there's so many of these things that are, there's so many franchise movies that came out this year. And Prey it's Predator, it's the new Predator movie. And the Predator movies, whether you consider the Aliens versus Predator movies part of that whole genre, which, to be honest, I have a hard time doing because they're so bad, they don't feel like it. But, I mean, I like Predator 2, The Predator, or Predators, the one with Adrian Brody, I think was a little better on a rewatch. I didn't like when it first came out. On a rewatch, I think it's still decent. And then The Predator, the Shane Black one that came out a couple of years ago, was just real bad. And I think this one, they finally did what they should have always done with the Predator series, and take it somewhere else and just make it a little movie about the Predator fighting somebody, which is what the first Predator movie was. I think that's why it was good. All this stuff to, whether they're fighting the aliens or they're doing this or that or the other thing, it just feels like it kind of takes away from what people like about the Predator franchise. And I think fighting against Native Americans, it kind of makes in that time period, kind of makes sense. And I think it was a lot of fun. And it's, again, not too long, fairly breezy. Not a lot of dialogue, really, throughout the whole movie. It's a lot of it's nobody speaking at all. Yeah, just a really fun Predator movie. I really hope that going off of this, that we will get more Predator movies like that. Like, why can't we get the Predator fights pirates movie? Like, why not that? Let's just put the Predator in all sorts of little places. Have him be in Siberia and fight, Russian soldiers in Siberia or something. I mean, just take it to different places. It doesn't have to have a continuity. Like I think especially in the age of Marvel films, we're so obsessed with continuity and everything having to follow something else. It's like, no, we can just have just a little Predator movie where a Predator kills, I don't know, pirates or ninjas or, I don't know, samurai. Who cares? Make it works. The Predators you could kind of put them anywhere because they've been around forever. So, yes, more things like this, please. I liked it so much, it made me smile, which, of course, is my number 2 favorite horror movie of 2022, Smile. I don't want to get too much into it because I feel like that movie definitely is best watched with very little foreknowledge. I think I said when I talked about this on the channel, the trailer really blows some stuff up. So don't watch the trailer. Please don't watch the trailer. Just watch the movie. The ending I have some questions about, but the ending didn't bother or didn't ruin it entirely for me. I think it hurt it a little bit because I didn't so much like the message of the ending, but it was still good. And again, I don't want to say too much more about it because I think if you're hearing this and you haven't heard anything about Smile, which is probably tough because it was a big movie, but just go watch it. Don't listen to anything. Don't watch any trailers. Don't listen to any more reviews. Just go watch Smile, and you're going to love it. All right, and my number 1 horror movie of 2022. And I don't think there was ever really any doubt here. I pretty much knew this. I think I knew it when I walked out of the theater. The Menu, with Ralph Fiennes and Anya Taylor-Joy. Just a great horror film. Great because you sort of see certain things coming, but a lot of things you don't. It's sort of, especially the way it ends, is just so kind of perfect. I think the relationship between the patrons and the staff and the chef it's just this really interesting dichotomy that talks about class and how this inequality preys on. I mean, originally it's preying upon the poor and the working class, but it even preys upon the wealthy, and you sort of get this impression that the wealthy, in a certain way, kind of even understand that. They understand this is bad. It's bad even for them. And I really loved it. I thought it was great. I think the acting's great. I think the characters feel oddly real, even though they are kind of caricatures, intentionally kind of caricatures. And I just really loved it. I think it's great. It's one of those ones, I wish there was a way you could do a sequel to this, just because I want to see this again, but you shouldn't, and there's no way you could. It's great. It's a great little. I think this subgenre of like class horror, you could put like Parasite in there, and Society, which Society I've still yet to see, and a whole bunch of other movies where it uses horror to sort of look at class. And if you've watched this channel, we love talking about class because it's something people don't talk about enough. And so a movie like The Menu really does that in a way that I think is approachable, and I think even people that aren't looking for that kind of message can kind of can get into this movie and really enjoy it. So The Menu is definitively the best horror movie of 2022. And on that bombshell, I want to thank everybody for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. I hope your new year is better than the old year. And have a good dream. And have a good day.
Did you just fucking shoot me? I can't believe you're making this about you.